The Coroner from 1999 review and thoughts. So I am going to start by saying there might be some swearing and such in this video. The movie's like rated R, I want to say. So will this video be? I am not going to get into spoilers until I get into the thoughts section. And these days I am not so keen on doing negative reviews, which is part of why the review section is probably going to be pretty short. This is one of those movies, I wouldn't exactly call it a classic, but I do think, if I may paraphrase, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. Okay, this will not stand. He wrote the... He wrote Huckleberry Finn. Mark Twain. He said of classics, I think he was specifically talking about books, but he said that it's the kind of thing, so to paraphrase, this movie's the kind of thing nobody wants to watch, but some might say you should have seen. And it's not that it's well made, it's not, but there are some really interesting elements in it, and that's why I'm doing this video. So, yeah, like, as far as the technical aspects and such, a lot of it has been covered in, there's not a ton of reviews on this, but IMDb has both user reviews and, if you wade through, there's some dead links, but there's also some external reviews through there that help really go into, but yeah, I'm not necessarily suggesting anyone actually watch this thing, if you can even find a copy. Like, the only reason I even own a copy is because it came as part of this box set. I used to buy these, figuring, how much money can I be wasting when there's 3 movies, in the one box, and the answer is, of course, too many. Too many money, still. Although, to be fair, this was how I found May, which I do still, the 2002 movie, which is still really excellent. And that's, the fact that that one's in one of these box sets is pretty much just that it's difficult to sell to a mainstream audience. It's not really a mainstream movie, and that was a way they got people to buy it. But yeah, a lot of these, it's movies that they would struggle to sell if they sold them one at a time. At least comparatively to selling them multiple at a time. But a lot of the technical aspects have been covered. I did not see a lot of discussion of the movie. I think from a political standpoint, the movie is quite progressive. It's especially for 1999. Like, by today's standards, it's definitely got some problems, but it is 25 years old, and it was in part made to be this kind of exploitative, kind of thing. And yeah, I haven't seen very much discussion of that. I consider it, that particular aspect, a bit of diamond in the rough. The overall movie, not really. But yeah, I'll just briefly say, one positive is I do think, so his name is Dean St. Louis. He's definitely trying, like, certainly some of the cast are trying. I don't know if they're necessarily succeeding. He is the villain, the titular coroner. That's not a spoiler. You find out almost immediately in the movie. The movie is never trying to make you guess. Yes. There is one scene really, really early on, where it seems like they're trying to hide the identity. As far as I can tell, that's because it was shot vaguely enough that it could be used for 2 different movies, which should be a pretty significant clue that, yes, I forget exactly how. I read it days ago, but not that I don't forget things that I found out seconds ago, but no, the Roger Corman is indeed involved in some way. I think maybe his company made it, so yeah, the whole reusing things. Roger Corman, I'm not sure I'm ever going to review one of his movies. Again, I no longer really do negative reviews. I haven't seen... Let's see. I think I've seen 3 or 4 of his movies, and none of them really qualify as good, but I'm glad that I've watched them because it helps provide, like, now I have that to compare to, so now I know, how good early Robert Rodriguez films are. And that was, I'm not the first person to point that out. That was, yeah, when Robert Rodriguez started making genre indie films, because there were some good-looking indie films before, but they tended not to be genre, and he comes along with El Mariachi, makes this action movie, and suddenly it's like, oh, wow, you don't actually need millions of dollars to make something look pretty good. And yes, I acknowledge there was some post-production work to make it look quite as good as it did, but still, you can only do so much if the original looks terrible. But yeah, let's see. Yes, Dean St. Louis, titular coroner, plays the titular coroner. He isn't a titular coroner. He has to play sinister when he's like doing the cat and mouse toying with a victim, and he has to play this more friendly, innocent, when he's, trying not to get caught. And he does put in effort for both, and some of the time even kind of gets there. And certainly, like, there's a lot of people who only have one of those 2 in them, so that's not completely nothing. And I suppose that's pretty much... There's a little bit of cinematography, maybe even a little bit of editing that are... You can see what they were going for at the very least, but yeah. I am not just doing this as like a counterexample, let's see, I guess Sunday I did a video on 30 Days of Night talking about how good it was in, a time when there were a lot of horror movies that really weren't that good. And I specifically talk about the 90s, I specifically talk about MTV editing. I swear I didn't pick this just because of that. But yeah, there is some MTV editing here. A lot of the serial killing is handled in just these really short clips that have so little context that they just don't have the same kind of impact. Like, it kind of feels like this, a chunk of the sex and violence in this movie are basically there to, like, lead to good word of mouth. Like they hope that a bunch of young straight guys are gonna rent this and, like, tell their friends, oh, you gotta rent this movie. There's sex and violence in it, but it's very gratuitous, and there's at least one point where the editing actually had me thinking, wait, are they saying that the killer is thinking about doing this? And then based on the editing right after that, I was like, oh, I guess he went ahead and did that thing, and it was just edited. Because, like, there's other times the movie has that one editing technique that it almost definitely overuses. I think that's pretty inarguable, where it will overlay something to basically, like, imply, yeah. And some of the time, it seems like it's saying this is what the character we're seeing is like thinking or seeing. But then at least one point, it appears to be that that's what he's doing, which just like this is editing 101. Like you gotta, it's the kind of thing you can do if you're making like an art film, if you're trying to get the audience, because like there it can absolutely work. Oh, you thought this was just in his mind, but it's actually what he's doing. You can draw like a connection between thoughts and actions kind of thing. What you think eventually becomes what you do, I believe the phrase goes. But that's not what they're doing. It just, like, I don't know if there were multiple editors or they like ran out of time or what, but it's just, it's sloppy considering that this was actually released. This wasn't like leaked or something. And the end credits actually say it was copyrighted in 97, so it sat on the shelf for 2 years and nobody fixed that, like, because it wouldn't have been that difficult. I suppose once you've locked down the edit, it's difficult, but it still just really shouldn't be there. Yeah, I don't know very many of the people involved in this. I did learn that the director, one of them, Juan Mas, has done stuff since this, including stuff that's much higher rated. I haven't watched any of it, but I can absolutely imagine that, there was like studio meddling. One of the directors, fully Alan Smithied this thing, and yeah, I saw someone say it was probably a learning experience for some of the people working on it. I don't think, I'm of the opinion that you should not be judged on your really early work, especially once you've made other things, because a lot of people's first movie, regardless of exactly what job they did on the movie, yeah, a lot of people, they early on at least, some people sadly for their entire career, kind of have to just go with what they're offered. It builds a resume. It gets you, maybe you can meet someone important on set. There's a lot of people who've been discovered in these kinds of ways. They were working a terrible movie that they and the person they met didn't think was going to be good, but they met that person, they made an impression, and it led to better work, which led to a career. Now, I think, yeah, one major thing is there's a very distinct like cheapness to it, which I already mentioned Roger Corman, but yeah, it is very oddly paced. Like, this movie is 71 minutes without end credits, only 74 with them, and it has this really odd blend of rushing ahead. Like, some of the first scenes feel like they should come much later, and also the movie has scenes that don't add anything other than running time. Like, I'm willing to like, if anybody watching this movie has actually watching this video has actually watched this movie, there's scenes in this that I try not to say that, because sometimes it's just, oh, I just didn't get it. Certainly by the time I did the video, since I usually do these so soon after. Although this movie, this is my third viewing. Watched it a bunch of years ago. I don't know, 15 years ago maybe, and thought it was just terrible. Watched it again 3 years ago maybe, and realized, oh wow, there's actually a bunch of stuff in there that I didn't realize. And yeah, for the last 3 years since then, viewing, on and off, I keep thinking, should I do? Maybe I could, And this is what I landed on: just a short review where I talk about at least some negatives, and then getting into the discussion, the thoughts. But yeah, let's see. I do maintain there are scenes in this that don't need to be there. Like, they feel, it's this fascinating thing. It's almost Paul W. Anderson, where it's like you've seen this in other movies and you just didn't understand why it was there in those. Oh, by the way, if you love this movie, I'm not telling you you're wrong. That's 100%. Like, there's movies I love that other people say are terrible. Anyway, yeah, there's scenes in here where, like, okay, if that scene seems to think it's revealing something about a character, but we already knew that about that character, and it doesn't develop it any further. And it's not that they could have just moved the scene to earlier in the movie, because there's the other scene that already reveals that about the character. Just, yeah. I think that might just about cover. I feel like there's yeah, one thing that I would definitely say, with the title and the cover, this is very much one of those. I guess I'll show it real quick again. Like, this cover puts a very distinct, I suppose I won't say image because it is an image, but it when you see that, you think the movie's going to be one thing, and it very much is not that thing. I thought that this was going to be like The Dentist, and possibly The Dentist 2. I only watched the first one, which is, of course, about a dentist, and one of my favorite titled movies ever. I believe it's from, like, the 90's, Exquisite Tenderness, which I didn't know what it meant. When I heard that title, I was like, I kind of gotta find it. It was a time when I watched pretty much any horror movie I could get near. But yeah, I was like, I gotta know what does a movie look like that has a title that I've never even. It's a phrase I've never even heard of. But a character in that movie explains it is the very edge of pain. Like, it is the most pain you can feel. I forget if they say without passing out or and survive the shock or something like that, but yeah. And that one's about a doctor, dentist about a dentist. Both of those movies take a profession that we feel a certain apprehension about because they're people that we're very vulnerable in front of, and they, some of the things they do can cause tremendous pain. We're alone with them. They might, we might be unconscious. So they've got these danger, potentially dangerous instruments. I'm not saying we shouldn't trust doctors and dentists, except for the ones that, like malpractice suit. Yeah, but it's a common anxiety of a fear, and those two movies actually have stuff that fits that. The dentist actually does attack people who are in his chair using his instruments, and the doctor in Exquisite Tenderness does some stuff. Like, there's some stuff being injected into patients, for example, that is, like, by today's standards, if maybe seems tame, but back then, and I don't think that had the biggest budget either. But yeah, it's stuff that, you're thinking, I hope that never happens to me, and, you watch that, and you leave it, hopefully relieved, and thinking, good thing that's never going to happen to me or anyone in real life. This is the kind of things, they push it to such an extreme that we know it must not be real. And this movie doesn't do that with Coroner at all. There's, like, I'll grant the tagline, pray you're already dead before you meet. That's nice and evocative. And again, the image, which, yeah, the image really doesn't connect to the movie. And I have to wonder if maybe it's possible that there was stuff and it was just, like, cut or not filmed or something. But other than that, I would almost guess that this was not originally supposed to be about a coroner at all, and they just added that because someone in marketing thought, that's gonna get more, people to care. Because it very much is not, the movie the poster sells is not the movie that you end up watching. And to be clear, I'm not saying that that's not something that bothers me that much necessarily. It's just, just forewarning. And it's just, it is very much, coroners, we don't feel completely comfortable around the, and at the same time, it's also not something, like I think we pretty much agree we do need coroners, we do need autopsies, as, off-putting as they are. And I think that just about covers the movie itself. Let's see. Yeah, I think that probably is a spoiler. But yeah, the writing and direction are not great, and I think that does cover all that I can say without spoiling anything. So before I do get into spoilers, I meant to say this early in the video. Oh, right, and it's still, October. It's Halloween month, so doing a third horror movie, and, I would have liked to only do horror movies, but, I these days I usually just do one movie per week. First week was Joker 2. Next week is going to be Venom 3. So, yeah. But I was able to squeeze in 3 horror movies. When I get into the spoilers, I'm going to try to explain enough that you can follow the spoiler section, even if you haven't watched the movie, which, a lot of the time I don't do. So, let's get into the spoilers section, and let's see, that was, how many is 22, 30, there we go, and there we go, yes. So, the core conceit here is that Dr. Leon Urosky, as a coroner, he seeks out women who attempted but survived suicide because he felt denied because they survived. And, that is legitimately, like, this thing of male entitlement is really, that's absolutely something that needs to be criticized. There's so many misogynists who feel entitled to women, and I've said this before, I think that, in real life, thankfully, like, statistically speaking, there's not that huge number of murders, but there are, sadly, a lot of misogynists who, if not engaging in sexually predatory behavior themselves, will back up a man credibly accused. Like, even no matter how much evidence there is, there's going to be a disturbingly high number of misogynists insisting that it was somehow her fault, or that, it wasn't that big a deal, or something, things of that nature. And I do think that in fiction, it can be very effective if you take that to the next level and talk about how, okay, so this misogynist doesn't, he doesn't stop at sexually predatory behavior, including rape, which is already bad enough, obviously, but he actually goes as far as killing women. That's how much he feels entitled to do whatever he wants to them, and how much he objectifies them. How much they become the sole targets of his pain, which, like, it's extremely rare for you to ever encounter someone in real life that is personally the cause of all of your pain. And if you're seeking out people and killing them, yeah, yeah, it's impossible for someone to deserve that kind of thing, in my opinion. And let's see, the idea is that he hides the evidence of his serial killing because he's the coroner. And if you do even a tiny bit of research, you'll find out that's simply not possible. There are checks and balances. Yeah, I believe that's the term, in order to avoid something. The writers of this movie were not the first people to think of maybe someone could do that. And I wouldn't rule out that at the birth of autopsies and such, yeah, actually I'm almost certain there was at least some stuff that was done that was quite unethical. Let's see, did they used to maybe harvest organs and resell them or something? Just really, really messed up. Like, I think at least some of the organs might have gone to like research or something, but yeah, like you find another way. It's really messed up to do that, but by 1999 there's not, yeah. And let's see, it actually, the movie has this, on the one hand, it definitely appreciates that sometimes powerful men will back up other powerful men so that they'll be able to get away with doing something horrible. Sadly, absolutely true, was back then, is still now, But then at other times, it does this very 90s thing. I remember there's other American media from the 90s where they kind of suggest that if the evidence does point to this powerful person being guilty, then they would lose, they'd lose the lawsuit if that's what's going on, or they would be arrested and prosecuted if that's what, and today we know that very often isn't the case. At this point, like, I've lost track of how many jokes on late night they make about, how ridiculous is that, like, let's see, I guess it's a month maybe ago, it wasn't like yesterday, I think it was Stephen Colbert who, there was this thing, like a judge declared, there was a lawsuit, I think, and a judge, decided there is no expectation that boneless chicken is boneless. And Colbert went off on a thing, did like callbacks and various, pointing out how ridiculous that is. At this point it's not even shocking anymore. It's almost a joke. And yeah, in the 90s, I think the mainstream perception was indeed that if you can prove that someone did something wrong, there will be consequences for them, even if they have a lot of power. And yeah, these two elements really push against each other in an awkward way over the course of the movie, because every so often there will be something where we can understand why the police don't believe, Yeah. And let's see, I think that pretty much covers, so let's see. Yeah, so yeah, the movie opens with we meet the character of Emma. I'm just gonna double check because I already there we go. Yeah, Emma the lawyer who, yeah, extremely progressive, really fights for regular people, which, she's cost a lot of relationships that could have been beneficial because she refuses to go along. If she sees injustice, she fights it. And I really appreciate that the movie does make clear, because by the end of this movie, she is completely isolated. There is no one left who believes her, and it wasn't that long of a list to begin with. And this is the kind of thing where, like, I could imagine today, post Me Too, there would probably have been, ultimately the movie has a downer ending. She kills the doctor, but she ends up in a mental institution, and clearly in great distress. She's in a straitjacket, I believe they're called. These, yeah. He dies, but he loses. And I have nothing against downer endings, to be clear. I think today it might have ended with her managing to succeed, and I can imagine she would have, because of at least one other woman in her, if she had a support network, even a small one. And yeah, like, the movie does communicate, she doesn't have a support network. He does. He is held up by the system. This patriarchal system that says that if a woman accuses a man, especially if that man has some power and high status, then she shouldn't even be believed. Like, the police do the absolute bare minimum to investigate what's going on. Now, let's see, I think I will just very briefly, so yeah, example of because I mentioned, gotta remember, I'm doing this section of the video in part for people who have not watched the movie, so, and I am spoiling everything anyway. Yes, when they first, when she takes the police to the home of the doctor, which, this is after she escapes from him. He captured her, tortured her, she escapes. She knows what the front of the house looks like, and she was hit by a car, so she just asks the police, take me to where I was hit by the car. And very quickly finds the place. And as soon as the cops recognize this guy as the top coroner, they immediately, like, they're like apologizing to him. Not immediately, but pretty quickly. Like, they almost immediately say that they don't believe he's guilty because of his high status, and this is legitimately, like, that is something that happens. There's so many, like, you can just look at someone like Harvey Weinstein. Some people, because of their status, some men are able to get, some women as well, but a lot of them are men. And yeah, but then they also feel, the scene also feels the need to have her say things that make her sound like she's just, like, overly emotional, and I do think that hurts the movie. I think it would have worked better if she basically didn't say, because when she takes the cops to the doctor's house, one of the things is that his kid was sleeping there, and she does rightly point out that doesn't prove he's innocent. Not, you can have a cute kid and that cares about you, and not, because the kid doesn't, you don't really get the sense that he's being, like, abused or something, because he, like, let's see, what was it that, I forget exactly what it, but the, Leon, uses his birth name for the son, and the son says, "That's not my name. That's a baby name. My name is Buzz." That's not something that you're gonna say if you're like terrified of what, if you think the person you're saying that to is going to, like, hurt you. That's not really, certainly so goes the common knowledge. I appreciate that sometimes they'll lash out, but also just like his body language, he really doesn't at all seem scared of the doctor. And the cops are right there. I'm not saying that you will always talk to the cops, but like, this does, and there's a woman there who's literally saying, this guy is hurting people. There's a lot of people. I'm not saying everyone. I'm not saying you're wrong if you don't. There's a lot of people in that circumstance who are, if Buzz was being hurt, there's a decent chance he would, run over to her and say, "She's right, he's hurting me." Now, let's see. Then we have the, but yeah, yeah, she makes that point. But then, it comes up that Buzz's mother is dead, and she says, "Of course she is," or "I knew it," or something like that, implying that the doctor killed his own wife, which, that, it's one of those things where just, like, given that she doesn't really have, like, she knows that he has killed others, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he did anything to her. Like, there are serial killers who have a long time partner that they don't, kill. So it's possible that when this movie was made, that wasn't, something that they really knew. At the end of the day, it is not, it really doesn't help her cause to say that, because she sounds like she's making fun of, a grieving, widow and his son, who I would guess is like 10 years old. That really, really hurts her case. And she is a lawyer, so I do really appreciate that the movie does acknowledge, I mean, she has PTSD. She is, at one point she has a nightmare that he attacks her in her home, which is something that people with PTSD have reported, that, they relive their trauma, and they, some of their PTSD flashbacks involve that they're being hurt in a place that they otherwise might feel safe. It's one of the reasons it's such a big problem. It's so difficult to deal with. And, and I think, an argument could be made that that's why she's saying that. And at that point, the police have shown that they're not really believing her. I think that the movie would have had a stronger impact if she didn't. I don't think it's wrong for her to make mistakes, but I think as soon as those mistakes are in front of law enforcement, there's going to be some people who watch this movie and think, well, of course they don't believe her. Look at how she's behaving, And I appreciate, you really can't win with bigots because of bigotry, brain rot. If it's a perfect victim, they're going to say it's unrealistic. If there's just one flaw, they're going to pick at that one flaw forever and act like that proves that there's absolutely nothing, that the guy did nothing wrong. Yeah. Let's see. There's cases where, like, misogynists have literally looked at video that shows a man assaulting a woman, and they'll say, well, there's no audio. What did she say to do that to him? As if there's anything that you could say that would justify assault. And let's see, I think that does cover. But yeah, when she first sees when she's right in front of the house with the cops at her side, at first one of the she's like hesitating, and one of the cops says, well, why are let's see. She says, I'm sure this is his house. And the cop says, then why are you hesitating? And she says, because this is his house, which again, very common trauma response, And the fact that the cop is really struggling to understand that, there is sadly a quite substantial history of law enforcement just not understanding not always not understanding, sometimes just not caring about trauma responses. They're very much acting like, this is a waste of their time. And that again is something, there's a lot of women who don't even report their the assault or rape that they survived, because they know from, it's at this point, a lot of people know, even though some deny, there's such significant evidence. A lot of people just won't listen to them. Now, let's see. I think that pretty much covers that scene. So yes, let's jump back to, we meet Emma. She, is always standing up for the people who need help, to the point where, other people who work not necessarily with her, but adjacent, are like teasing her about it. Early on, when she says she's gonna be like reading cases all weekend, I don't think they ever say exactly, but I'm gonna go with aid. Let's go with aid, because her name is Ada. Anyway, Ada, the A to the ADA. Ada jokes, that over the course of the weekend, she's going to adopt a turtle from the zoo and take in an unhoused family, So, everybody knows this about Emma, and one of the other lawyers confronts her and says, I can't believe what you said. You impugned my character. I think he even says he's going to sue her for slander if she does it again or something. And she isn't really having it. And later in the movie, he's not really helping her. I guess he's basically been given the task of, she has decided she's going to represent herself, and he is this is after she's been caught, she was arrested for, she broke into Dr. Leon's house. Maybe I should stop calling him doctor, but then he didn't go to evil medical school for 4 years to be called Mr. And, she broke into his house, and he made it seem like she broke stuff in his son's room. In reality, he was the one who broke those things. But she did also try to blow a hole to find so that she could prove that he had this torture basement, but he had it, like, reinforced. So the C4 does basically nothing. But she's representing herself. This lawyer is like explaining to her the things that, if she had if she was letting herself be represented by another lawyer. Other than that, this character doesn't appear at all in the movie. I think that with a quick rewrite, he could have been the killer. Although I do appreciate that they did, like, Leon attacks women that he knows because he stalks them, but that are strangers. They're not in his circle. And I understand this is something that a number of serial killers do. I don't follow that much like true crime, but I do listen to a number of YouTubers who talk about true crime. And let's see, yeah, it's he's one of those characters. Like there's a lot of characters in this movie that feel like they don't really need to be there. They're there to deliver a little bit of exposition, help establish, maybe even develop, but barely that, Emma and or Leon. But yeah. Anyway, the let's see. Hold on, there was a thing. Mine's going two different directions at once. Let's see. There's the. Could talk about more in the. Yeah, the fact that he stalks, that is also one of those things, let's see, a number of times when a woman is assaulted by a man, it is someone she knows, but that changes when that man is a serial killer, so yeah, once they decided that they were going to make him a serial killer, and that is crucial because after a point in this movie, she basically accepts that her life has been destroyed. He has destroyed her life, and basically, like, once he kidnapped her, cut off her finger, which is one of those things, like, there are times where you can clearly tell they just, like, had her bend her finger and then, like, tied some tape over it and said, oh, well, it's like gauze, I don't know why they didn't just, like, I can imagine, like, maybe the screenwriter thought there'd be a bigger budget or something, and they'd be able to make, like, a prosthetic that hides but if they had just made it something, because there are other, like, she also gets a couple of bruises on her face, and he gets some cuts on his face. If they had just made it that, just have it be that instead of him cutting off a finger, he is seen to like, yeah, cut maybe her face or something that they could. It could be her hand. It could still be her hands. That way you don't have to apply the makeup if you're not showing her hand, if you're just shooting close-ups of her face. But anyway, he kidnaps her, ties her up, cuts off her finger, makes it clear he's going to kill her, that he's done it many times before, he's going to keep doing it. And, once she escapes, yeah, of course she can't just let that go. At first she tries to have him arrested. Once that doesn't work, she becomes a vigilante, specifically against him. And yeah, after a point, she accepts her life has been destroyed, and she accepts that as long as she can stop him. So it is crucial that he is a serial killer, that this is not just... Because if this was the first time he did it, or if there was something making it clear that he wouldn't be able to do it again, like, let's hypothetically say that he ended up in a mental institution or some kind of prison, or there was some other, something happened that would make it extremely unlikely that he would be able to kill again, then that element of the movie wouldn't work. And that is one I do think does work. Now, yes, so at the start of the movie, she just got out of court, and we see that, she comes across this, prostitute who is crying, and she's like, did Cashew do this to you? Cashew. Nuts. And, it's one of those things, I'm mixed on this exchange, because on the one hand, like, she basically shames her for bad decisions, which you really don't want to do to a disadvantaged person like that, And she asks, have you ever had sex for pleasure? And the prostitute says something like, what do you think? Which, it's one of those, feminism was in a kind of weird place in the 90s. It was this like somewhat post-feminist thing of like, because on one hand, the line is expressing that there's nothing wrong with a woman having sex. A woman having sex for pleasure is a good thing. That is explicit, not even implicit, in that line. But she's saying it to a prostitute who, as best as I can tell, is doing that out of necessity, and I kind of got the sense that Emma knew that. So it's treating it as if it's like a character flaw. It's one of those, like, it's like she might as well be saying, just say no to prostitution, yeah, because yeah, it really doesn't seem like she has other options. And that's also a thing, this was yeah, the late 90s. There was still this idea that if you didn't have to be a prostitute, you probably shouldn't be one, which, by today, like, I don't know, I can imagine it might still be, like, there's still a lot of people who don't see it that way, but those of us on the far left, we do appreciate that it's not... Okay, before I say exactly that, I gotta make clear. Obviously, nobody should be forced into prostitution. And anyone who is a prostitute should not be shamed for it. If they would like to get out, we should do what we can to help make sure they can and get a completely different job. Like, there's a lot of, sex workers who would like to quit, but, they once people find out that they are currently or have been a sex worker, that's extremely difficult, and that's something we really badly need to change. If someone is a sex worker and they don't want to leave it, we shouldn't try to force it on them. And there are some who just, like, in this movie, she is a prostitute. Like, it seems like she's, she, like, gets picked up by men. She doesn't appear to be working in, like, a specific, because some, if you work in one specific location and there's, like, security and such, that can really greatly decrease any risk of you being attacked, which is one of the worst things about sex work, along with it being difficult to leave, is that you might be attacked, and yeah, but yeah, escort, I've seen an interview with an escort where she said, yeah, I mean, I get taken out to fancy dinners. I don't have to spend a lot of time with the individual, which works for both of us. Yeah, some are fond of it. That's not, and yeah, sex work is work. Now, let's see, yeah, this movie, if this was the only piece of media you took in, you might think that all sex workers are prostitutes that are, at risk, make bad decisions and such. And it also, like, not very long after she's killed, she has time to tell Emma, I got dreams, which, that line echoes when Emma realizes she's dead. Which, during the 90s, it's giving Pretty Woman. It's this thing of like, no, don't worry. She wants to leave. She's one of the good ones. Very, very condescending. But she's killed by Leon. Not everybody who he goes after is a prostitute or otherwise at risk, because he goes after Emma and very nearly does kill her. So, like, if the movie is trying to say that, you know, this thing, you know, because that is a trope, and there is some actual real life, you know, there are real life examples such as Jack the Ripper, you know. Now, let's see. I do also think the movie definitely has an issue with sometimes having people just like in plain view and somehow manage to get away. Like, he captures Emma when she is like jogging on the sidewalk in like fairly public place. You know, like it's like late, so I guess there's not a lot of people like outside, but you know, he just like he renders her unconscious, drags her into his car and drives off. And just he's not wearing like clothes that really, you know, he later on she sneaks up and she's wearing like black clothes, but he isn't wearing, he's not even covering his face in this scene. And it also makes it harder to take seriously because he's using a blow dart when, like, I mean, later in the movie she's the one who uses it, but this is a world where tasers exist, you know, so I don't know why they felt the need to do that. That was the scene that was specifically called out by a user reviewer. He said they said they rewound it 3 times. And let's see, I think that pretty much gets us to, yeah, so the specific, you know, yeah, once he has her in the, you know, yeah, he straps her to a table. There's, for some reason, he has 2 separate tables that he straps her to, which I think might just exist for him to at one point carry her from one to the other. Now, like, as far as I can tell, I think it's that when she's unconscious, he wants her lying on her back, whereas when she's conscious, he wants, you know, he has this this table that's like practically vertical, so she's more like standing up. And yeah, I don't know, it just seemed, it seemed like it was just there so that, because that's how she escapes. She fakes being unconscious, and you know, that's also like the cliches are out of control here. It's extremely obvious to the audience that she's not actually, but yeah, you know, and that makes him take off her restraints. He has the blow dart. I don't know why he wouldn't just use it, you know, so the movie can happen, really. Now, let's see, right, he specifically calls her a tease when referring to the fact that she survived her suicide attempt, which I also, I don't know if this was purposeful. I suppose I should have said earlier, it's possible that some of this was just accidental. And yes, I'm sure I'm reading too much into it. Go ahead and accuse me of that. Wouldn't be the first time that I've gotten the accusation. Wouldn't be the first time it was true. And nor is this the first time on this channel that I'm covering something that, you know, I'm not really assuming anyone watching has watched. You know, I know this, every so often I just like to do something that I think is interesting that nobody has heard of. Yeah, so let's see, he is, yes, he refers to her as a tease. And yeah, just the fact that, you know, so there's a couple of things there. There's the fact that he's talking about doing an autopsy on her as if it's sex. You know, he says, you were promised to me when you attempted suicide, and then you know, you refused me, you denied me, I think is his, denied was the word, channeling his inner Will Smith there. And yeah, just the fact that even on something like that, a woman living is literally, to him, a personal affront. you know, a woman doing something that he doesn't like he considers that an insult, an attack on his masculinity. And this is something we've seen, you know, I forget, I think, was it Comicsgate that was literally set off, you know, like it had been brewing, but, and I could be misremembering, but there was at least one of the numerous misogynistic harassment campaigns online where it literally started with, you know, a woman tweeting out a picture of her and other women having milkshakes and smiling together. That completely set off, you know, these misogynists, because, like, I've tried to think of how you even get there. Like, I'm sorry, but I've never been upset at seeing someone I didn't like happy when they're not happy about someone suffering, you know. But that's one option. Maybe that's what these misogynists read into it. Maybe they were thinking, oh, they're just happy because there's no men around. Because, you know, bigots, a lot of bigots have a victim complex, a persecution complex. They, you know, bigotry, brain rot, they see things that just aren't there. You know, I don't mean to be making light of, like, actual mental illness, but yeah, the just extremely uncharitable readings. You know, so yeah, that's one option. Maybe they didn't like that the women, you know, they don't like the idea that women can be happy together and or without a man being present. You know, there's a lot of misogynists who feel extremely threatened when women gain independence. Like, you know, there are still jokes being made about women supposedly being bad drivers, even though that's not what the, like, I don't know, maybe it's possible there's at least one study out there. The studies I've seen say that women are actually better drivers than men, not worse. You know, Jimmy Carr has an excellent joke about it. I forget the exact numbers, so let's go with, like, you know, 90% of all automobile accidents are caused by men. And you know what that means? The remaining 10% are caused by bloody women drivers. You're a menace. You know, that's how the you know, this backwards logic of, like, finding every single, you know, and, like, when I was a kid, nobody told me that. I just, you know, when I would see, like, movies and TV shows, there would be all these jokes about it. You know, Simpsons did bring it up. You know, Marge points out, statistically speaking, women are better drivers, you know, but there's a lot of media that just mindlessly repeats this trope. And so people grow up, you know, I didn't think that women were lesser. I've never thought that, but yeah, like, I thought, oh, you know, they're good at a lot of things, but I guess maybe not driving, you know, it just, yeah, these things do matter. But yeah, let's see. But yeah, you know, like, it's not a bad thing that women can drive. It's a really, really good thing, you know. But yeah, the moment that it happened, you know, a bunch of these misogynists knew if they just say that they don't like the idea, especially if they admitted that it makes them feel like less of a man, you know, there's thankfully a lot of people who would just laugh at them and refuse to hold back, you know, women's civil rights. But instead they said, oh, they might be dangerous, you know, this is you know, if someone that you think might be a bigot says this is dangerous, double check their claim. Now, let's see. I think that basically covers that. So yeah, but I think I think that line works. The fact that that's how he sees this, you know. And then I guess he put, let's see. I'm not 100% certain which of them, but yeah, one of them, you know, put her in, like, a cheerleader's costume, and then he comes down looking like, I want to say quarterback, or maybe just, yeah, I'm not into, American football. I'm not even into real football, soccer, whatever. But he's wearing that garb, and yeah, it's one of the ways, obviously, like, the text is that he's role playing, and it's, I think it's in part because, like, they never actually talk about, like, was she a cheerleader? Was she into a football player? But her suicide attempt was when she was 14. So that's, he's like trying to bring her back to that, which also helps explain why she's so determined to stop him after that. He's like tearing up these old wounds, that, like, I can't say exactly her age, but I could imagine it's been like a decade. Like, if she's high-powered lawyer, that's, yeah, I would think at least a decade, maybe two. Now, let's see. But yeah, it is one of the ways the movie gets these gratuitous, it really sexualizes the women, which obviously does run counter to the otherwise progressive messaging. So I think that might have been a concession. Like, the studio was like, we're not going to be able to sell a movie that, is this much about humanizing women. We're gonna have to sexualize, which, yeah, like, a bunch of the time Emma is showing more skin. Like, she's almost never naked. There's one sex scene where she's topless, and they film it in a way where you can see she's clearly wearing underwear, which again suggests, they just, yeah, it's another element where, like, yeah, where it feels sloppy. To be clear, I'm not saying that anyone should be pressured into, showing more skin under any circumstances than at all necessary. It just, I can't help but notice that they did that. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, a lot of the time she's showing bare midriff or legs, stuff like that. And there's times where they're trying to, like, make it seem like, oh, she's just, this is what she's comfortable in. Because, like, near the end, when she's showing leg and midriff, like, essentially what she's wearing, it's not like lingerie. It is, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's maybe what one might, let's see, I think the top might be what one might wear to work out. And she's wearing, like, briefs, I think they're called. It's not like, the underpants are not like the most flattering thing in the world, but it does still feel like, that almost makes it feel even more awkward. Like, they're trying to find some excuse for, because, like, I don't know, I kind of would figure she'd be wearing sweatpants, instead of having bare legs. Like, it doesn't look like it's super hot where it is, and there's, like, she's engaging in a little bit of physical activity, torturing Leon, but yeah. Now, let's see. So right, some of the most effective, like, as far as horror goes, overall this is psychological horror, but I would argue, but the escape, which I really wish that they didn't. Yeah, I already mentioned the movie's padded. There's 2 escape attempts, which is just, like, because they're right after each other. Like, I don't know if maybe originally there was supposed to go some scenes in between. Also, I can imagine, because they actually, like, when she talks to I want to say it's the police, she tells, I was in there for days, maybe a week. That is not what it seemed like the movie was communicating, which, again, I'm not saying that can't have happened. I'm saying the movie really needed to do a better job of communicating that, because there's going to be people watching this. Well, I guess not very many people did watch this movie, but at least some of them might have taken away, oh, is she delirious? Like, they might not even necessarily, hate her and think she's lying, but they might think that can't be right. Like, it looked like she was there for maybe hours or something, but certainly not anywhere near that long, so yeah. And like, even if you don't have the individual scenes, like, just have a line or two. Like, you can even ADR, because like Leon doesn't really shut up once he starts like villain monologuing. Like, just have a thing about, shortly before her escape attempt, have him say something like, I can't believe you haven't made more progress in the last 5 days, or something like that, Like, even if you wanted to say, oh, it's, maybe like her sense of time is kind of weird, well, then, like, have an objective proof of it. Have someone say, we were actually, have one of the cops say, we were actually looking for you. You were reported missing a week ago. Something like that. But because it's just her saying it, and the movie doesn't really back it up, it has this counter intuitive, it's not working the way it appears to be, because I really don't think that the movie's ever trying to make us think that she is actually irrational. I think the movie wants us to feel like sometimes she makes mistakes because of what there was, but she's never outright just completely irrational, which, that's extremely important for a story like this, because I'm not going to use the actual word. Tell you what, because it is considered extremely offensive now, it is sometimes still used, but there's a word similar to hysterectomy, which used to be applied to women who just didn't do what the men in their lives wanted, which, considering that marital rape sadly used to be illegal for extremely long time, a man, other things that were legal were that a man could beat the women in his life. A woman was a father's property until she got married, then she was the husband's property until, one of them died, and then, if she couldn't get remarried, she was just screwed. Women, it's no wonder that they, would get, that they wouldn't do every single thing that a man says. And keep in mind, there are situations where women have done everything that a man asked for, and he's still mad at her. Roald Dahl actually wrote a really great short story, Lamb to the Slaughter. It was made into an episode of one of the Alfred Hitchcock TV shows. I don't remember which of them. The episode isn't quite as good as the short story, but it's a pretty good. It's a fairly close adaptation. It is fascinating to me that Roald Dahl, he wrote, because it's a story about murder. He wrote that story, but then he also wrote, like, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and, wasn't there at least one more? I gotta be careful I'm not confusing him with Dr. Seuss, but there, although I've heard that there's a lot of, like, deaths in, I haven't actually watched, I know, maybe I will at some point. I like Gene Wilder elsewhere. I'm not sure I'm not sure I would watch the Tim Burton version, but anyway, that story, and I realize it's fiction, but that, it does show something that does happen. Like, a husband is literally leaving his wife because she's too good, she's perfect, and, when she hears that, she tries to she basically said, well, did I do something wrong? What can I do different? And that just makes him even madder and even more determined to abandon her, And like, there's so many cases where, every so often a misogynist will accidentally be extremely honest. Like, I don't have the name, but there was this, let's see, I think it was a Harlan Spinks video. Great YouTuber, by the way. He was talking about, like, misogynists talking about the, yeah, being extremely harsh with women. And there was literally this one guy who said that when they weren't going out of the house together, he kept his partner in the basement. And after a while, she didn't want to be confined to a basement. So, yeah, she ended the relationship. And he hates her for that. He thinks that he did nothing wrong. Like, think about how twisted that is. And he said this on camera. There was another guy there who was like, oh, but I mean, she chose the basement, right? And he was like, no, I chose the basement. And he still doesn't stop and think how dehumanizing that is. How, like, there's literally, like, other than the fact that he would eventually, that he would sometimes take her out, when they went out together. Other than that, like, that's like serial killer shit. Like, yeah. I wouldn't do that to my worst enemy, and I hate my worst enemy. And he's doing, he did it to a woman that he supposedly loves, that he wants to be in a long-term relationship with. Like, it's not good enough that you're taking her out. He was like, oh, but I spent a lot of money on her. Yeah, when you were also there, you spent money on things you could both do. That doesn't make you some kind of hero. That just means you didn't want to do those things alone. Like, the fact that she wanted to leave the house without him doesn't mean that she was going to cheat or leave him or do something. Like, she might just have wanted to be with her friends. She might have wanted to just go do a social activity that you didn't want to do with her. But the only thing that I can think of, I'm not sure he said it although he did shame her sexually with a 4-letter word that starts with an S. I don't really want to repeat. I think that's enough clues, Mr. Policeman. But yeah, I think I gave you all the clues. But yeah, like, the only thing I can think of is he must have thought that she would go cheat on him, because otherwise, why would he even be worried about, like, I've been in 2 long-term relationships. It never occurred to me during either that when my partner left the house that she was gonna go cheat on me. Like, it never just... And I'm not saying no woman has ever cheated. And I'm not even saying that it's always the man's fault. But how are you with someone that you truly... How are you maintaining a relationship where you don't feel certain that the partner won't cheat on you unless you keep them in your basement whenever you aren't out with them? Like, how does your mind even go to basement instead of breakup? Just, yes. And yeah, there's people like that out there. This is, that wasn't fiction. I mean, I suppose if it almost, it's one of those things where it's like, it's beyond satire, because how could you even, like, it's at this point impossible to think of something more extreme. I saw one clip where a guy said that, he was driving a woman home when she said she doesn't need a man. So he kicked her out of the car, drove off, she got kidnapped, and he didn't seem to feel bad about that. He was saying it as, like, I sure showed her. I got her kidnapped. I guess she does really need a man. And there was this there was a comment that I thought was absolutely perfect. This story doesn't prove that that women need men. It proves that women need Ubers. And again, like, I can't even, like, even if you wanted to say that you don't want to be with someone who doesn't think they need you or anyone like you, even if you wanted to say, you know, it's dangerous out there, you could get kidnapped, drive her to the destination, and then after she leaves the car, you could maybe convey that and then, you know, maybe break up, because clearly it's not, you know, if you're willing to shove her out of a car in a place that she ends up getting kidnapped, which suggested it wasn't exactly a super public place, it wasn't somewhere where she could easily get to, you know, safety. Clearly you don't actually, she's not the one you want to be with. I question if there's anyone that you would actually want, if that's all it takes, but yeah. Yes, so let's see. The movie. I was going into the I hope I finished making the point about specifically the movie that I was going to, because I do not recall what the last thing I said about the movie was. Anyway, it's not like I was talking about something completely irrelevant. I was giving examples of this sort of thing. Anyway, yes, so let's go to the right, I quite appreciate that, you know, by the end of this movie, almost everyone that has abandoned Emma is, if not white, then white passing cis-het man. You know, there's really only one woman who abandons her. That would be Ada. And it doesn't seem like she really clearly doesn't want to, but it's, you know, Emma is going full vigilante, and Ada is literally saying, look, I can't help you anymore. Like, I feel like I should probably report you to the police. I'm not going to because we're friends, but please don't ever call here again. Whereas some of the men, you know, yeah, they stop believing her before, and like when they, you know, the cops don't even believe her when all they, or, you know, show very little patience or empathy when, like, nothing has, there hasn't yet been anything that this proves any, you know, like, even as they're approaching the house where she, you know, says she was, you know, yeah, tortured, and he was going to murder her. He said that, you know, yeah, they're still like, do we have to do this, you know? Which is also, that's I also don't know, because I feel like they were already established to not, at least one of them, not care that much about his job. He's like, you know, looking at a murder scene and he's eating a sandwich. So, you know, and the other one does point out, how can you, you know, have, after all this time, sir, have you no shame? I don't know why I did that accent there. But yeah, anyway, let's see. Yeah, like, the movie very much paints the, you know, paints this very clear, a very realistic picture that, you know, American law enforcement, and in general, you know, America, a lot of the West in general, is this patriarchal system that keeps down women, doesn't believe them when they are victimized by men. You know, if a woman hurts a man, or even, like, does something, you know, then certainly there'll be hell to pay. Now, let's see. So, you know, near the end of the movie, there's this scene where she's, you know, she's been arrested for what she, you know, her vigilantism against Leon, and the early examples of vigilantism, you know, she did plant a bomb. You know, it's not nothing. I guess maybe it's less vigilantism and more like, what's the word? Like, vandalism. Destruction of property, something like that. You know, that explosion also did not look like it was filmed for this movie. It looked like stock footage or something. Now, let's see. And yeah, in the end credits, like, stuff pops up that says, you know, yeah, some of this stuff was from another Roger Corman related movie. Anyway, let's see, because the explosion, you can only see the explosion. You can't see what is exploding. You can't see the surrounding areas. So, yeah, I wonder how many times it's been used overall, or was going to. I don't know if they ended up not, you know. Anyway, yes. So she's been arrested, and the male lawyer is explaining and he says that Leon is not going to press charges provided she gets psychiatric care, and it's clear that this is a power move. He's just trying to hurt her in any way he can, and he figures that will hurt her more. You know, and it's one of those places where it also, like, if he hadn't been a coroner, it would almost have felt more logical, because a coroner is not going to get to go see, you know, these like mental health, like, he might be able to talk to the psychiatrist after sessions, between sessions and such, but, you know, if he had been a psychiatrist himself, like, you know, I'm not sure, I can imagine there's probably a law that says that a psychiatrist can't treat a patient that has made accusations against them or something. If not, there probably should be. But just the fact that, yeah, it just feels... Anyway, but yeah, you know. And so, yeah, he comes into the room, gives her the glare that he does multiple times. I will say, you know, it is decent when he, like... When she doesn't know... Or, let's see, it's not always. When they're not right next to each other, sometimes he will go, Emma. That was a decent enough, like, creepy kind of thing, you know. And he does it when he's trying to catch up to her during one or both of the escape attempts, and at the end when he's caught, and I guess, yeah, I suppose he can hear, because her partner walks into the place, and I think the idea is Leon can hear his voice. So he again does it, and that attracts the partner's attention. So, you know, it's a formidable psychological weapon against her. And in that case also otherwise weapon. You know, in that it attracts the unwanted attention. Now, let's see. But yeah, you know, he walks into the room, so do the two cops who, you know, she was hoping they would arrest him. They ended up arresting her because of the explosion. Where we again have a thing of, like, you know, she says, when I accuse him, you don't believe me, but when he accuses me. And it's one of those things, like, because I'm sorry, but, you know, again, I'm in real life, you know, 100% believe women. But you were caught pointing a gun at his head. Like, there's physical evidence that you broke in. I mean, he didn't break into his own place. He was already inside. Clearly, you know, there's stuff you can do to make let's see, to make it clear if some place was broken into. Like, I mean, what is the alternative? He let her in, left, broke into his own place. Like, it doesn't make any, you know. And she did plant the explosive, and I think she even admits that, you know. So it just, again, it makes her seem irrational, which I really don't think the movie means to make, you know. I think it is that thing of, like, the CYA, they gotta try to make it seem like, no, you know, this is why she's not believed. Let's see. Yeah, I'm sure there's people calling this movie misandrous, but, you know, if they watched it, given how few, like, I suppose an argument could be made that there's really not a single good man. The man that probably comes the closest is the partner, former partner by the end, I guess. And he does handcuff her, but he thinks he's saving Leon's life. Yeah. let's see, he's another character that, like, he's there very early on, and then he disappears for a huge chunk of the movie and comes back at the end, to where you almost forget him, and you think the movie might have forgotten about him. But yeah, I mean, I guess he was there in an earlier scene just so he could pop up at the end. But so the lawyer is sitting in front of her. She's sitting on a chair. In walk a doctor, a sandwich-eating cop, and another cop. Stop me if you've heard this one before. And there's this shot that is inspired. Like, that and the part where she tries to escape, and it's this very disorienting. Like, they never make the mistake during her escape attempt of making it completely clear where she's going or where she even is. Like, until right before she does leave the house itself and is hit by a car, which leads to, like, at first she has, like, bandaged stuff, but then when that comes off, the bruises look bigger than what the bandage would have got. Anyway. And they also have this thing about how, you know, in her sleep, she was trying to pull out the IV, and, you know, they strapped her to the bed in order to prevent her, which is, of course, also really upsetting to her. You know, as soon as she's awake, they explain this whole thing to her. I forget if they immediately unlock her cuffs, but anyway. But, you know, yeah, it's very disorienting when she's trying to escape. If the movie had just had more stuff like that, these really inspired sequences, you know, and during this, you know, you're hearing, some of the time you're hearing him go, Emma, and at one point, like, he pops up right behind her, and, like, there's mostly a wall between them, but there's, like, these holes. It looks like it's in the process of being built, and he sticks his arms through and grabs her, and she does manage to get free. But yeah, very effective, creepy stuff, you know. But yeah, this shot, you know, the camera's above, and essentially she is surrounded by men who do not believe her, you know, some of whom have explicitly expressed that they can't stand her and want to hurt her. You know, it does a really great job visually communicating. Like, it's one of those things, like, it would have really been frustrating if they felt the need to have her say, I feel like you're ganging up on me, why are you surrounding me, stuff like that, because that would spell it out. But instead, it's just the visual that is quite impactful, and it does tell me that someone working on this had a vision, someone, you know, and it was just, you know, I don't know if it was studio meddling, maybe there was also some inexperience going. This was the first work of some of the, you know, the people who had the most influence on how it turned out. Now, let's see, then we have, but yeah, like, you know, the movie, I think it's maybe 10 minutes in that she escapes. You know, she's caught like 4 minutes in and escapes, well, 7 minutes? Anyway, you know, yeah, escapes. She knows, you know, his face. She finds his address not very long after. Then she's told his name, title, and job. And yeah, you know, I'm not saying the rest of the movie had to have mystery, but it doesn't really have anything else either. You know, like, she immediately tries to stop him in some way. You know, she deduces. She looks at evidence and finds, you know, yeah, he's definitely a serial killer. The test came back from the doctor, and yeah, she tries to do a couple of different things to stop him. And it's one of those movies where, in order to get it to a certain length, a character will try something, fail, and then not long after try the exact same thing, or yeah, not the exact same thing, but try to accomplish the goal in a slightly different way, and then maybe succeed, you know. So there's 2 escape attempts. There's 2 times where she goes to his house and does something that she knows is illegal. She tries to talk to the cops twice, you know, just, yeah. And it doesn't even add that much screen time. Like, overall, I would say if you cut out all the repetitive stuff, you would probably lose about 20 minutes, which, you know, this is one of those movies that should probably have been an episode of a TV show. I'm not saying I know exactly what TV show that would have been, but yeah, at 40 minutes, I think this would have been... They could have paced this well, then they just need to tighten up the screenplay, have better production value, and you're set, you know? Like, it could have been so much better. And let's see, then we have the... what was the other thing? Right, yeah, you know, once, yeah, she figures out, you know, he's definitely a serial killer, talks to, you know, yeah, she does try to talk to, you know, like law enforcement and maybe the other lawyer, I forget, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, you know, it doesn't take a huge amount of time before she does the what's the word? Yeah, she, you know, breaks in, then ends up arrested. You know, this thing of, you know, having to agree to mental health care, which I guess is why they don't keep her locked up, which is how she's able to then kidnap him. And then it ends with some torture, which also feels like, I don't know if they ran out of budget or there was gonna be stuff to like in between, maybe. Again, there's catharsis there because he's a monster. You know, I don't want this to happen in real life, to be clear. But in a movie, in a piece of fiction, you know, yeah, you know, basically she's, what's the word? She's doing to him, it's a taste of his own medicine. That's the thing. And yeah, it's so short, and it also seems to like start doing a thing. Like at one point she's like throwing darts at him, and we see her throw one, and then we see that there's two in the wall, and then she throws another one, the second or the third, depending on what, you know. Yeah, the continuity's not great in parts of this movie. And, you know, yeah, she misses with the darts, and then she just decides something else, and it just feels like her throwing darts, that could have been, like, you could have spent maybe a minute on just her throwing, you know, I mean, let's say she throws 6 darts, 1 minute, that's an average of spending 6 seconds per. You know, you can have her do a couple of different things. Maybe she throws without looking at one point, just to you know, really toy with him. Maybe at one point she does like the, you know, before she throws. Some of them miss, at least one of them hit, something like that. But I mean, from the moment she first picks up, and yeah, right before that, we see her throw darts, and she seems pretty decent at it when it's a dart board. I don't know if they're trying to say something about, well, it's more difficult when it's a living person, even if it's someone you hate. That is true, but it just doesn't really convey it. And like immediately after, she uses a nail gun on, like, she shoots a nail into like his chest, like one of his breasts basically, and then, you know, grabs it with pliers and twists it. So clearly she's not like 100% averse to doing so. Yeah, it's just, the movie feels confused, and maybe that's, again, maybe there was a rewrite there. Maybe the studio said, you got to have her hurt him. It's been too long since there was violence or something like that, you know. So they have her do that instead of, you know, maybe there were several minutes there where she like leaves and is like, I don't know if I can do this, and trying to figure out, you know, is there maybe another way? No, I have to do this kind of thing, you know. You could have done something there, but yeah. Let's see, what was the other thing that I wanted to say? Let's see. Yeah, and right, near the end when she, like, I don't know what people in this movie have against, like, what are they called? See, in Danish we just call them door spy. No, it's not keyhole. Peek hole? It's the part where, like, the part of the door that has this small little, you know, hole with a piece of glass in it. You look through that, and you see who's on the other side. You know, Emma refuses to use one, says that it looks like it's actually just drawn on. I guess the location they got wasn't... No, that's not what she says. That's what I'm saying. What she says is people get shot through those, which, again, I don't know if that's supposed to be her being, like, paranoid, or if we're supposed to think... Because, you know, ultimately... Okay, for anyone who hasn't watched the movie, so nearly everyone, I gotta set the scene. She hears the door, opens it, it's Leon, and he, like, strangles her. And then she wakes up. It turned out to be a nightmare. You know, her PTSD, she's feeling like she's not safe in her own home. She's not having a dream that he kidnaps her when she's jogging. She's having a dream where he attacks her in her own home and kills her, you know. So, yeah, she wakes up from that, and we see that, you know, oh, right. Oh, hold on. It looked like he was going to be able to kill her, but she manages to, like, knock him away with some of this, you know, I appreciate that they do set up. You know, she took self-defense, and she's got, like, a sword in her place, and, you know, she takes self-defense seriously. You don't need a sword for that, but I guess someone just liked the aesthetic choice or something. But, you know, it's not like you're going to be attacked in public whilst carrying a sword like that. You know, this is not Iron Fist Season 1. To be fair, that is substantially... Iron Fist Season 1 is substantially better than this in most ways. Anyway, and that one is fairly progressive as well, so not really... Anyway, yes, but yeah, the martial arts I would describe as over choreographed and under rehearsed. You know, I think I might have even wrote that in my old text review on IMDb. Yeah, you know, but yeah, she fights him off several times over the course of the movie. That, again, just feels like, okay, you really didn't have any idea. Like, if it was an action movie, it would be fine to have this much martial arts, but it's not. So it just feels out of place. And also the fact that it doesn't look that good. But yeah, you know, she manages to use her self-defense martial arts to fight him off. And then she grabs a gun. She was hiding under the pillow. One of these days she's going to... Okay, I guess I won't make that reference, but just... It made me think of Desperado and Steve Buscemi, which is not a bad thing. But yeah, you know, she grabs the gun and, you know, shoots him. And I think he dies, but he, like, collapses on top of her, which is, of course, really uncomfortable. Really gross situation, you know. But yeah, then she wakes up. There really is someone knocking at the door, so she picks up the gun. And yeah, instead of looking through the hole, she, like, unlocks the door, says it's unlocked. And when someone walks through, you know, because of how, you know, yeah, at this point she is paranoid. She, you know, the PTSD is really messing with her. She points the gun directly at the person's head before giving any kind of like trying to see who it is, because it's Ada, whose body type and head look nothing like Leon. And she's understandably put off by this. And let's see, then we have... But yeah, you know, close to the end of the movie, she knocks on his door, and he just opens it, even though he knows she's out there, and this would be the second time. She already broke in once, and he's not thinking about, might she come back? And again, you could have had, like, some kind of... Let's see. For one thing, maybe she... I mean, honestly, let's see. Yeah, no, like, at some point, if she, like, have her... Actually, wait, did she stalk him? I think she might... Yeah, maybe not. I might be mixing up different parts of the movie now. But yeah, she could be stalking him, since they're doing the thing where it's being reversed. She could be stalking him, noting what time he leaves for work every day, and then be waiting during one of those times, especially if she notes, oh, he always leaves for work alone, so there won't be witnesses, something like that. But no, she just knocks on the door, he opens it, with not a nary a care in the wary, ha-ta-ta-ta, and then she stuns him. And I know they probably didn't have the budget, but I don't think just a tiny little bit of electrical spark would have hurt. Well, him, but not the movie. Because it really doesn't look like it. It's very clear that she's just holding it up to him and they're adding the noise of it, But yeah, so she grabs him in broad daylight like he grabbed her, he didn't grab her at broad daylight, but she does at least, like, let's see, she's not in black, she's in like a worker outfit, and she said, she claims she's there to clean the carpet, and then she apparently rolls him up in a carpet, and that's how she's able to transport him, into the, she couldn't afford that overnight bag that Patrick Bateman does. Anyway, and then we see she took the tapes, which I forget if I've mentioned, but he indicated tapes when he said, he was filming her and he was indicating tapes. He's done this a lot of times before. He's got, like, I don't know, dozens of tapes. And she told the cops to look for them. They said they couldn't without a warrant. Then she said, we'll get one. They got one. They looked. They couldn't find it. Or did they say that there wasn't enough grounds for a warrant? One of those things. They didn't find the tapes. And she went to the door that led to the stairs that she ran out of, and he, I guess, managed to put up, it can't have been like a proper wall already, I don't know. I guess if he started work on it immediately, maybe he could have, like, just nailed in like a wooden wall to cover the stair. Anyway, there at the end, she found the tapes. They make a point to show her carrying the tapes and then the tapes are never brought up again. And I would think that she would maybe make sure they got to someone, and maybe this was in the script, but they didn't shoot it. Maybe they ran out of budget, or someone lost faith in it and shut down production, or said that you got to finish the movie now, or something like that. But yeah, the tapes are never brought up again, I guess, because I would think she would make sure to show them to someone. I'm not 100% sure that he himself appears on the tapes, but if you can hear his voice, that might do something. But the next thing we see, she chained him in her place, and and she starts torturing him. So it's like, again, I just feel like if she had gotten the tapes when she broke in earlier, I guess that would require a third break. No, actually, yeah, tell you what. If she breaks in and she grabs the tapes and she, like, let's say they do a terrible job frisking her, so she manages to sneak at least one tape in her clothing or something. With these cops, I would believe that. And she gets that tape to Ada, who gets it in front of, like, a judge or a high-powered lawyer or something. And that, like, seems like it should be enough, but for some reason, you could have the thing of, like, it could be extremely obvious that that's Leon's voice, and it's extremely obvious that, he's killing this woman, she was found dead, he did the autopsy, all this that points towards him being guilty. And then this male judge still says, that's not, I'm not going to, actually, maybe he even says it could hurt my career or something. I guess then maybe not a judge, maybe a different lawyer or something, and they would be like, well, it has to be a different lawyer because Emma's too close to this thing. And hand in your sword. And just the fact that she grabs the tapes and seemingly shows them to no one just feels really, really awkward. And the movie, after she tortures him for a while, the very ending of the movie shows almost the exact same sequence, although now it's overlaid. Let's see, I don't think it was overlaid at the start of the movie, but the very first, from what I recall, the very first thing in the movie is this, like, dolly trip down a, what's it called? The camera dolly, down a hallway of, like, a mental institution, and there's, like, sounds of distress, and they've, like, I forget what the exact thing what it's called, what they did, but maybe washing out the colors or something. It's you know, it's off-putting on purpose. And then the camera goes to, like, a door, and then we're seeing something that's supposed to be inside that door. It's probably a set elsewhere, but inside is Emma in a straitjacket, in great distress, crying, and, you know, they overlay Leon's eyes, though at that point we don't know yet that those are his eyes. And, you know, not long after we see, maybe it's not the very first thing we see, but it's one of the first things we see. Not long after we see Emma, you know, as a lawyer, and that does convey, you know, this must, what we saw was not what is and not what has been, but something that is yet to be. And the very end of the movie, we get the same dolly trip down the mental health care facility. And I think there, maybe the camera pulls out instead of going in on her face. But other than that, it's the same basic thing. And so, you know, she ended up in an institution. And because there's nothing between her killing Leon and this sequence, I have no idea if she was at all found, like, if they finally accepted that Leon was a serial killer, because she has the tapes. You know, when I in the years between my first and second viewing, I thought I remembered that Leon killed her partner, but she didn't. He's and like, they could have at least left that ambiguous or something, but no, we clearly see she's helping him walk out of the torture area. There at the end, he's alive, he's conscious, you know, like, she's not carrying him, he's walking on his own power. He needs her support, physical support, for that, but, like, he's gonna say, Leon tried to kill me. And the fact that the movie doesn't make clear because I think it could have been powerful, and I know the movie probably didn't have a huge, you know, not a huge budget. There's not a lot of scenes that have very many extras. Just, you know, we never see the inside of a courtroom, you know, much like an entirely too high percentage of people who've done something wrong, especially if they have power. But it could have just been, like, you know, just have, like, hard cut, show the judge, like, banging the gavel a couple of times, saying, you know, let's see, I guess it would be, and then he makes the, you know, he says something like, I've heard both your cases, you know, and you, let's see, Emma wanted to represent herself if they let her do, and maybe the prosecuting attorney is the one that she doesn't like from early in the movie. And you know, the judge could say, you know, you are, you know, Emma, you are guilty of murder. And, you know, she could point out, but my own partner said that Leon tried to kill him. You saw the tapes. How is that not enough? And, you know, the judge just, like, rolls his eyes, and maybe the lawyer, like, smirks in satisfaction that he was able to, you know, because he said earlier that he really hates her guts. You know, something like that. But because it's not there, I don't know if the movie is saying that that's what happened, or if somehow her partner didn't testify, or maybe the tapes weren't shown. Like, let's see, I guess, would the tapes be inadmissible evidence? I guess maybe. But certainly the fact that, I mean, she could get like the torture charged with torturing him, but like her killing Leon, like if she says, well, I thought he killed my partner and he only stopped killing, after he killed my partner, he came right at me, and that there's physical evidence of that. Yeah, like if her killing him was in self-defense, which again makes me think maybe originally they were trying to do a thing of like she's struggling to hurt him, because of the darts also, but and I think there is something there. I think the idea that she wants to hurt him because she hates him so bad, but she can barely bring herself to do it. She keeps missing with the darts. And then, when she does actually kill him, she does it, she literally had no other choice. If she didn't, let's see, she picks up, I don't know if it's supposed to be a spear. It looked kind of like a pipe maybe, but yeah, and he impales himself. And, let's see, I think that she maybe push it in some, which was, was that necessary? But no, if she really struggled to hurt him after he hurt her and so many others, and she only kills him in self-defense, and then she's still the one that goes down, that is such potent commentary. There's something really there. There was that, let's see if I can find, because there was a case, I'm going to find real quick because it is right in here. I have it written, so let's see if I just gotta find by word search. Oh, that's an interesting. Let's see. Okay, so Marissa Alexander, she clearly fired the gun careful not to injure the man, but she was punished as if she tried to kill him. Sentenced to 20 years. It took the jury 12 minutes to make the decision. She had been abused by him. She was just trying to scare him off so he wouldn't abuse her again. And they acted like, oh, she was trying to kill this innocent man. Like, she was very careful. It was extremely clear. She was very careful to not kill him. Not even... And like, he was coming right at her. It was clear that he was going to hurt her again. I don't personally think, I'm of the opinion that violence should always be the absolute last resort, especially lethal violence. But if someone is coming right at you to hurt you, and he knows she has a gun, like, I think there's a decent chance that he might have killed her, over that. So if she had killed him, she didn't, but if she had, technically that would have been self-defense. I mean, what happens to stand your ground? But yeah, because, she's a woman, she's also black. Yeah, suddenly, they can't throw the book at her hard enough. Now, let's see, I think... Yeah, there's a little bit more to say about the ending. So I suppose, I'll start by saying, early in the movie, before things start going really wrong for Emma, I think before she finds out even a single person has been killed, she is seen, having sex with her partner, whose name escapes me, so partner is what he'll be called for now. Right, also, earlier I talked about the prostitute. I swear, I just don't remember her name, and I'm not sure I would be able to recognize it on the cast list. I'm not saying that she is only her job. Anyway, yeah, she's having sex with partner. She's on top, and it's one of those things where I'm not 100% certain if they're trying to say that she has, like, because she's been... There's stuff about her being, like, controlling. Like, there's... Yeah, I gotta say, some of the reasons that the male lawyer really hates her is that at one point she hit her own witness, and she says he was lying. And then the male lawyer says, "You put a dog on the witness stand?" To which she says, "At least he didn't lie." Which again, just, I think, like, obviously, I don't think either of those are right to do. And yeah, see, for sure, the thing with hitting a witness, that suggests that she does have a history of, she goes too far when she believes she's right. And that does work for the rest of the movie, The thing with the dog just feels like, okay, you just kind of wanted someone to tell, like, again, it sounds like something someone came up with to get people to recommend that it, like, someone's gonna some young straight guy is gonna say, "You gotta watch that movie. You'll never believe what she did with a dog," or something like that, Let's see, but yeah, let's see, yeah, she is established as being somewhat controlling, and we find out she lost her entire family at age 14, and the coroner's report said no one was to blame, and it's again one of those things I really wish we knew. Let's see. I believe they say it was a car accident. Or am I just trying to figure out what it even could have been that killed her entire family? I mean, you can't have been a serial killer, and then anyone with any sense says that no person was to blame. But if it was a car accident and she really wanted the other driver punished for that because she thinks it was his fault, yeah, I don't know. That ends up making her sound like Don Quixote or something. Like, it sucks, but sometimes it isn't really any, like, specific person's fault when there's a car accident, Now, let's see. And it certainly might not be one of the drivers. Although, again, that's me trying to figure out where the movie's going with that. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, since age 14, she's had to be fairly independent. So, but it's also possible that her being on top is just they thought that would be hot or something. I don't really know. Anyway, that is basically the only time we see him other than the end. And, after the sex, she says, "I'll cook dinner tonight," or something. And I do think that's that line. Yeah, there's definitely going to be people saying I'm reading too much into it. Maybe I am. I can live with that. The fact that she specifically words it like that says that she doesn't cook every single night, which is one of those things, like, we gotta stop demanding women do that. Like, if that is what she wants, then of course that's not wrong, as long as she doesn't feel pressured into it. But she has a job, she's gonna spend her entire weekend reading cases. This is, she's not someone who just has all the time in the world to be doing something like that. Now, I don't know if that means that other times he cooks or if they get, like, takeout or what exactly, but just that little bit. And also, she is saying, I will cook. So she's, it's one of those things where, like, some women have been shamed for being willing to cook for their partner, and that we got to be careful not to end up, there, because the fact that, for so long women have been forced to do it doesn't mean that it's impossible for a woman to organically want to. There's nothing wrong with wanting to cook. I realize it's not the same thing, but, it's been a while personally, but I used to make really, really good spaghetti sauce. I used to love making spaghetti and spaghetti sauce for other people and seeing them really enjoy. It was something I spent a while perfecting the spices. There's a sense of satisfaction to making something that other people really like, making something for someone you care about, and that's the vibe I get from that line and the actress's reading of it, so yeah, I thought that was quite good. Like, it feels like she's celebrating the case, which, if I understand, she won a case at the very start of the movie, Now, by the end of the movie, he pops up again in a place that they don't really establish. Like, she says, you can scream all you want, not to partner, but to Leon. That's a very different reason to... I don't think she would be torturing him, unless that's something they're both into. But she tells Leon, you can scream all you want. It used to be a bomb shelter, which also, like, I don't know if that's supposed to, like, subtly plant in our mind that, you know, I guess he won't be able to accomplish anything by saying, you know, but, you know, like, not many minutes later, partner comes in the door, and, you know, he walks in the door, you know, and, yeah, he hears Leon go, Emma. So, I mean, okay, I you know, that might be purposeful that they did that. But yeah, like, is it supposed to be her apartment? Because I'm not entirely, like, because like, why would she be living in an old bomb shelter? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's possible that that's some sort of, like, also a security. Fair enough. You know what? I know that there are some people in real life who chose to, you know, to have a home in a certain way specifically in order to, you know, because of their trauma. And let's see, then we have the because like the other thing is, no, yeah, I mean, it almost must be where she's living, and I guess either he wasn't living with her or she made him leave in the time between. But yeah, and you know, he's acting like forever has passed since they saw each other, but the movie itself hasn't really communicated that. Like, well, let's see, I guess last time was before she was kidnapped, which is also like that. I'm sorry, that's something where you kind of want, you know, just have him give her a hug and her say I'm okay, and that, you know, it doesn't have to be a long scene. But I get, is the ending supposed to imply that he hasn't seen her since she went missing for a week? And he's whining about, like, what, is this your new boyfriend? Like, you know what, fair enough. There are men like that out there, sadly. But again, because earlier on he seemed like a good guy. So it just, I don't know. I don't... Or are they saying he's a good guy when they're together, when they're having sex, when she's cooking for... Again, I think there's something there. But I feel like I'm just grasping at straws, trying to make this... Yeah, I just... It's... That's part of the reason I do videos like this. I gotta try to figure out what is it that happened here, because this could have been so good. Like, there's so many other movies that just don't... Like, this... I've seen a number of movies from the 90s where the villain is a woman. Sometimes the hero also is, like Hand That Rocks the Cradle, which I do still, you know, I have a soft spot for that movie. There's stuff that I still think really, really works about that movie. Was it called Mommy Dearest? I think the protagonist was also female there. But, you know, yeah, you had in the 90s a number of psychological thriller horror movies where some poor person was victimized by this horrible woman who's not being a good woman. You know, there's some kind of thing, you know, like, let's see, I don't know if I want to give away exactly, but yeah, you know, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, there's some reason why you know, they're not being a good woman. And I think, was that also, see, I gotta be careful I don't get the title wrong again. Let's see. I think Fatal Instinct is the parody. What's it called? Fatal Attraction, maybe. Something like that, you know. I haven't watched it, but I hear. So I'm not talking about, like, the quality of it, but I'm saying, you know, what I've heard is that one is in part about, like, a woman who doesn't live up to the expected role of women in society, and supposedly, you know, women absolutely lose it under those circumstances, which, again, just it's this misogynist nonsense that, like, there's a lot of women who are specifically happy because they're not forced to live up or down to society's expectations of women. And there's a lot of women who are miserable because they're forced into living like that. So, you know, but yeah, I don't remember the title, and I suppose I probably wouldn't say it anyway, but I know I know of a non-zero number. I've watched one, I've heard about another, of psychological thrillers from the 90s. Oh, right, and hold on, real quick. I think Fatal Attraction might not be 90s, just to, I'm not saying they're only from the 90s, but yeah, there's a movie, I believe it's from the 90s, where it's this guy who thinks he found his dream woman, and then she basically like systematically destroys his life. This misogynistic idea that women don't want a relationship, they just want to destroy men, as if patriarchy hasn't been destroying women since time immemorial. And like, yeah, sometimes there are women who do terrible things to men, but like when you look at the circumstance, it's usually in response to patriarchy, and sometimes overt abuse by the people that they're, angry at, or they're using someone else as a proxy. Which again, I'm not saying that's okay, but there's a lot of the time when like a man does something terrible, especially if they're like really high power, high status, not high value, it's just because they're bored. It's because they're kind of like, well, nothing I do really seems to matter. I guess I'll do the worst thing I can think of instead of, something good. Like, if you're not in a situation where you have to do something bad, like, I acknowledge there is such a thing as necessary evil. I don't blame someone who steals to eat or take care of their baby or something. But if you're in a situation where you can get away with doing almost anything, you can just choose to do good. That'll make you feel better. It might not make you feel better permanently. You might have to work on yourself also, but you don't have to choose to do something terrible. And so many of them do. And I will acknowledge sometimes it's because they have some untreated mental health issue. Now, let's see. And obviously they should be able to get treatment, but just when you read about some of these things, you'll see that they kept doing it, and that's like, just, yeah. How do you keep doing the wrong thing without just turning yourself in, Now, let's see, okay, so what was the other thing that I wanted to... Right, yes, the movie. The movie from the 90s. Guy loses everything because of a manipulative woman. And the very end of the movie is her, like, basically villain monologuing to him in, like, he got put in a mental institution because of some of the manipulation she carried out. And he strangles her to death whilst explaining to her that since he's already got... he's already in a mental institution for having a condition that she made up. This is supposed to be like, oh, poetic justice. Bet you wish you hadn't destroyed him, don't you? As if it's particularly common. Like, statistically, it's way more likely to be a man hurting a woman for no reason at all. Not out of any kind of necessity, as just, like, okay, hypothetically, let's say you're stealing some food to eat, stealing some baby supplies to take care of a baby, and in order to escape, to get that stuff to the hungry and the baby, which may be the same person, you, like, push a woman out of your way to get to, that's pretty much the only... yeah, and like, if you are being attacked, if you are currently being attacked, using some force, you should try to make it proportionate, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, so he's strangling, in the movie from the 90s, this guy's strangling the woman in the asylum, and he's saying, they're not going to, like, give me the death penalty because let's see, what was it? I guess it's not temporary insanity, but it's like, oh, they already knew that he had a mental condition, which I'm not really sure would even work, but that's not, but yeah, that's treated as a victory. Like, the audience is meant to, like, it's supposed to, like, make the women in the audience scared of doing the wrong thing, and it's supposed to have men being like, yes, he won. After all that, he still won. As if men don't usually win when there's a conflict between a man and a woman. Like, if you feel like there's a, it's not feminism you have an issue with, it's patriarchy. Feminism has done tremendous good and continues to do so. I'm not saying it was always perfect, but it really doesn't hurt men that much. There were some early waves of feminism that, let me think, let's see if I can, it's been a little while since I read about this, but if I recall, the first wave was pretty much, like, I'm not sure it was always going to turn out that way, but I think it ended up being mostly white middle-class women who wanted more rights for themselves, but you know, they weren't intersectional yet. They didn't help, or at least not enough, didn't help in, for example, BIPOC women enough. You know, they didn't help poor women enough. But over time, feminism has done a lot to, you know, yeah, to address those issues. You know, like comparatively, like Reagan fucked up a lot in America, you know, what, 40 years ago, and a lot of that still hasn't been addressed at all. You know, feminism wasn't, you know, it didn't start out like perfect, but they've always been moving towards, you know, and perfection is something you can strive towards, you can't actually reach it, but yeah, feminism and a lot of other progressive movements are at least making the effort. It's, you know, if you actually look at it, like think about what is the thing that you are blaming a woman for and try to see, isn't it patriarchy or maybe a reaction to patriarchy? Like there's a lot of women who do think, a lot of female feminists who do think that women should serve in the military, who don't think that, you know, women should just so easily be granted custody of the children without there being some kind of, you know, they're willing to acknowledge, yeah, sometimes the father is actually the better at taking care of the kids. Anyway, I could go on, but this video is over. 2 hours. This is the longest I've done in a little while, isn't it? I think it might be. At least of a movie that it wasn't in theaters. Anyway, let's see. What was the other thing? I suppose I've pretty much said everything about... But yeah, you know, yes. So there at the end, you know, partner comes into the place and he's like, did you leave me for this guy? And then, you know, Leon picks up on that immediately and says, you know, oh, she's been stalking me for years. She left you for me, but I turned her down and now she's torturing me, you know, something like that. And partner pretends, you know, that he's... yeah, he basically tricks her and like handcuffs her, which, you know, yeah, I can't help but note both partner and Leon, you know, let's go with handcuff. They suspend her hands in some way, and it also happened when she got to the hospitals, you know, so that it's a recurring thing, you know, because like you could have had a thing of like, oh, he like made it into the basement before her, locked the door, and she has to break down the door, and that's why she... Because there was, you know, it was necessary to slow her down a little so that, you know, he frees Leon, partner frees Leon, who then tries to strangle, you know, partner to death, which also, I mean, I guess at that point we're supposed to just think he just can't help himself because, like, dude, he was gonna release you. Emma's handcuffed. You know, she doesn't have evidence on you now that she didn't before. Like, again, I'm thinking the tapes were probably inadmissible evidence. You know, you at this point you can prove she kidnapped you. This in no way serves your, you know, I don't know, maybe it's one of those things, you know, he is evil, but it's reaching like Saturday morning cartoon villainy. It's evil for the sake of evil, you know, and it just feels, and the fact that like ultimately he doesn't, the partner doesn't even die, so I don't know why they could, if they just wanted him taken out, again, yeah, maybe it's this thing of like trying to make sure that it's self-defense because someone working on this wanted this thing of like, yeah, hence the darts. Anyway, yeah, I think that pretty much covers that, right, she uses the sword to slice his Achilles tendon, and says something like, "That's the difference between you and me. I do significant damage right up front," and yeah, like specifically, even she herself, not just the movie, like to the audience, but yeah, there's being drawn a parallel between what Leon did at the start of the movie and has done countless times before, will continue to do if he doesn't die now, and what Emma is doing to him right now. And let's see, it's technically, I don't think they ever say that he raped her, but it's feeling like a rape revenge movie, And let's see, I think that pretty much just leaves the gratuitous aspect. So over the course of the movie, there are a number of times where we'll see these short, utterly contextless clips of violence. I may have already mentioned them, but yeah. And with some of them, like, there's one point where a woman is like pulled into a van and then like attacked in there, and I don't know how, like, it's such a public place, I don't know how that's supposed to have happened without someone seeing. And yeah, honestly, I wouldn't rule out that at least some of the clips of violence are just straight up filmed for other stuff, and maybe there they shot context, and that context wouldn't work for here, because you don't know anything about any of these women, and you don't see the face of Dean, you don't even see his body most of the time. So yeah, I think that's what happened. And some of the time this is in the context of him sitting and watching his tapes, and I do think, I don't hate the use of close-up of his eyes, because he does have an intense glare. He does, like, if I didn't know he was an actor, I might think, oh wow, they did find a serial killer, and I guess just really watch him very carefully. To be clear, I'm not saying that. I'm not 100% not making that accusation. I'm saying for that, his acting is quite good, and that doesn't have to mean anything. I hate when people are like, oh, he's a little too good at it. No, it's acting. Like, if you don't have other evidence, then yeah. Yeah, an accusation or something, but don't go off that someone seems a little weird. That's not enough to, anyway. But yeah, they superimpose his eyes over some of this footage, and yeah, they're showing him watching these tapes, underlining, basically when he isn't doing it, he's thinking about doing it. He's constantly, he's like a shark, he or a blobfish perhaps, but yeah, all he ever thinks about is killing. And let's see. Yeah, just the fact that, like, actually, I suppose that covers the violence. So I'll talk some about the sexuality. So yeah, I've said what I had to say about Emma's outfits, which, to be clear, I'm not saying says something about the actress or the character. It feels like it's just saying something about some of the people in the crew, like maybe the costume department. Probably a producer said, "Gotta show more skin." That's what sells these days, And it is very much one of those movies where you can tell, like, okay, there was, I forget if Corman was one of those, but I heard of at least one studio where maybe am I thinking of one of the Friday the 13th? I feel like I heard at least one of the Friday the 13th movies. Straight up, they said, okay, every 12 pages, one page being roughly equivalent to 1 minute, someone has to die in one of these Friday the 13th movies, so it feels somewhat similar here. And because so much of the time they're when they're showing, I'm not, it's not necessarily always violence, sometimes it's sexuality, but because so few of the kills are within the time span that the movie is set, most of it is like flashbacks and video replay and stuff like that. Yeah, it just ends up feeling like you literally could just have removed this. You know, certainly you didn't need to spend so much time on it, but yeah, it's there to say, you know, yeah, to get people to, and yeah, unsurprisingly, a number of the women are sexualized as they are, you know, killed in the film. Now, let's see. What was the other thing? Right, yeah, the movie. See, I forget if this happens before the mental institution. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, one of the first things you see is literally this like club where, you know, multiple women, you know, are topless, and you know it's not like setting a scene. Certainly the toplessness doesn't need to be there at all. Again, like if this was exclusively a killer of sex workers, then sure, but Emma is his main preoccupation for nearly the entire movie, and there's no, like, they talk about her past. Apparently she never did sex work. Certainly if she did, it never comes up, and his interest in her is the survived suicide attempt. So yeah. Now, let's see, what was the other thing that... but yeah, you know, we see several women topless. Then yeah, not very long after, we see a guy lighting his cigar, and I feel like... No, I think that actually is just how long it takes to properly light a cigar. I guess what I'm saying is, I think it was a silly choice of a motif, because it doesn't look intimidating by itself. Like you gotta have something else. Like I've seen movies where someone will be like called in to torture someone or kill someone, and they'll, you know, put up a cigarette or a cigar, and it'll take them several seconds to light it. And because we're expecting, you know, violence, then we're, you know, it's the anticipation is killing us. But here it just seems like he does this before he grabs her. Like it seems like he's just giving her a chance to get away from there, and she seems put off by it immediately. He has both of his hands busy, just, you know, yeah, get away from there. You know, it just, yeah, that was yeah. Anyway, and they do a thing to the voice so that you can't quite tell, and I can imagine it's not Dean St. Louis, or possibly the ADR'd it, because I'm pretty confident that that's the whole strip club scene is probably what they also used in a different movie, because it feels complete, like you could cut it out. You know, if I was trying to trim this thing down, it's one of the first things I would get rid of. It doesn't do anything. Like I think if the first person that dies in the movie is the prostitute, that would actually make it more, like, because it actually kind of feels a little weird that, like, so, okay, apparently there is a serial killer. This is a known thing. He's killing, you know, they establish that he's killed a lot of people very, very early in the movie. And then we see Emma, and she's like, yes, I won the case. You know, I saved one person. And, you know, it just, no, I think if the first thing, if it went directly, if we didn't see the killer before we found out that the prostitute had been murdered, you know, that would introduce the fact that there's a serial killer in the movie. And that, I think, maybe also they were worried that people would, like, stop watching if all they see is a tough female lawyer, and then, you know, go back, you know, return it to Blockbuster, remember them, and, you know, not tell any of their friends, maybe to rent it or watch it, maybe even tell them avoid it, it's just about a woman. Now, yeah, I think one of the most gratuitous bits, and it almost feels like, maybe it's not so bad that the movie isn't longer, because I can't rule out that this isn't what more of the movie would have been, because it's a part where they do actually have Dean St. Louis. You know, some of this padded stuff, they don't have the main actors. They're showing other characters that pop in and pop out whenever the plot needs them, and we don't learn that much about. But yeah, there's a scene where Dean St. Louis is like going to a club, and he's reluctant. His friend invited him out, and one of them says something about selling the house, which I think was just supposed to be like stock dialogue, just some kind of, because was it the friend who sold the house and he's celebrating by going out? Or was it that, because the moment that I heard the line, I thought, oh, are they saying that Dean St. Louis, Leon, are they saying that Leon sold the house and is like leaving so that he doesn't get caught because he's worried about Emma? But not long after, she's back in his house. He's right there. So I guess not. So it's just a really confusing line, and I wish they had just had some other stock piece of dialogue. Like, there's a million things he could be celebrating, you know, just... Let's see. Yeah, just anything that isn't a house, you know, it's pretty much anything else, you know, just, yeah, say, you know, maybe he's working on some kind of project at work, and it was just approved, so they're going to get additional funding or something, you know. But yeah, Leon goes off in a room to be by himself, hears someone walk into the room, hides, and, you know, yeah, the two people who come into the room, it's not established right away, but apparently he is the woman's boss, and every so often they have sex, and he has explicitly told her that he's not okay with her saying I love you, with them like taking it to the next level maybe, and he even fires her right there on the spot. And see, if the scene didn't feel the need to really hypersexualize her, you know, she walks in, she takes off her dress, she's like dancing, you know, she's like, it looks like a porno or something, I'm told. The you know, just, she's like grinding against the table, she crawls across the table, and, you know, every so often it cuts to his face, and I'm not going to imitate it, but yeah, he's, I guess not O-face, not yet, but yeah, you know, in that general direction. And yeah, you know, they end up having sex. She says, I love you. He leaves her just like that. He doesn't even like help her get dressed or something. So she's just sitting there naked. And yeah, he fires her, just walks out. And I think she even says something like, what's going to happen to me? And he says, I don't care, if I recall. And see, there are misogynists like that out there. There are people who actually would do that. But it's hard to, you know, we're so much of the scene is male gazy bullshit of her, you know, sexualizing herself. I'm not saying that, like, to be clear, 100%, there are men who treat women like that even when they're sexualizing themselves in front of them. You know, there are, and you know, a woman does not actually lose any of her value by being a sexual human being. You know, the one thing with sex is consent. You know, got to be of age. You know, if you're doing it in a place where others might see, it has to be under circumstances where they would be okay with seeing it, like live sex show, is that what they're called? Let's see, and yeah, you know, whether it's two people or more, you know, as long as everyone consents, which of course also means, you know, they can't be so drunk, or, you know, there can't be some kind of pressure, yeah. But with all that said, when the movie shows us that and films it like that, edits it like that, like, they might as well have put up like a neon sign at the top of the screen that said, yes, go ahead, you know, this is the time to get off, you know. And another thing that actually does work about the scene is the fact that the only peeping Tom in the entire movie is Leon, and he's a serial killer. So it's, I don't know if it's meant to be rebutting, but I can't help but notice, because there's a lot of movies where, I mean, we're not supposed to think, is that a spoiler? There are some movies from the 80s where we're supposed to think that a guy being a peeping Tom. It's just him being a guy, and there was that thing where Mike Huckabee said that he doesn't believe that trans women are women. He thinks that it's a way for cis boys to get into locker rooms. And then he says something that I would admire his honesty if it wasn't so utterly disgusting. He said that when he was a teenage boy, if he had thought he could get into the girls' changing rooms at school by saying that he was a woman, he would have done it. And the crowd apparently loved that. They thought it was hilarious. And it's one of those things where, like, that doesn't mean that that's, like... Yeah, I mean, that's obviously wrong. It's wrong to think, it's wrong to do. But that doesn't mean that that's what, we know, like, there's almost, like, statistically speaking, it's extremely rare for a trans person to assault anyone else. It's when you hear about, there was a struggle over a trans person in, like, a public bathroom or a changing room or something. If you actually read the details, it's, and it's an honest reporter, it's usually that a cis person was provoked by the very presence of a trans person, even though the trans person wasn't doing anything wrong. But yeah, I really appreciate that in this movie, the only peeping Tom is by far the most despicable character. And they directly link it to him being a predator. Now, not all peeping Toms are killers, but peeping is a form of sexually predatory behavior. Like, if you truly... I understand wanting to see someone you're attracted to in that kind of circumstance, but what you do is you get into a situation where they're comfortable with it. For some people, that means a long-term monogamous relationship. And obviously, don't do it if that's the only reason you're doing it. I'm just saying, if there is someone that you would like to be in a long-term monogamous relationship with, and part of you is thinking, I would like to see them, in a sexual situation, give them time, let that happen, because that will happen organically. But yeah, also, like, if it is just a hookup, that's also fine, but that's not what peeping is. Peeping is specifically when you're doing it and the other person doesn't know, can't do anything about it, those sorts of things. Now, let's see. And, yeah, in the 80s, like, you got Porky's, Private School, Married with Children. Like, there was a lot of American media for young men that, basically acted like, this is so cool, don't you wish you could have done this, kind of thing. And just, yeah, I really appreciate this, rebuttal here. I think that might actually cover... Right, yeah, before the scene is over, Leon spots that she also has scars on her wrists, like Emma did, and was it shown or implied? Supposedly he only kills women who, failed at committing suicide. And yeah, he notices her scars, and then when when her boss leaves, and she's sitting there crying naked, Leon walks up to her, covers her in his I think it's his coat, and says, I'll take care of you. And the camera goes to his face, and we see the evil eyes. So, clearly implying he's going to kill her. It's one of those things, like, it feels like one of the lesser Dexter kills or something, because it's like, okay, so even though the killer here wasn't expecting to find someone to kill, because that's not what he didn't go in there thinking that, I feel fairly confident in saying, and the person he wants to kill falls directly into his lap, and he just with ease, like, yeah, the let's see, I think that pretty much covers that. Yeah, right. I do also appreciate about that scene. Yeah, you know, he is being a predator, not sexually, but yeah, he is choosing a target that can't defend herself. And yeah, again, you know, and is in fact tying together being a peeping Tom and other predatory behavior, because that is the thing. Like, yeah, I think that might. And yeah, to be clear, in real life, you know, a lot of, you know, peeping Tom, it's more like other sexually predatory behavior. But yeah, I think that might actually cover everything. I did not expect this video to get this long. 2 hours and 40 minutes. You could have watched the entire movie, you know, several times over in the time it took me to say all this. Please let me know if you did. I would actually be fascinated if someone is even more, like, fascinated with this movie than I am. I just realized I didn't actually do a rating. This is a perfectly decent place to. Yeah, if we're talking like technical aspects and such, yeah, this is, you know, definitely a 1 out of 10. But the whole diamond in the rough progressive elements, I guess, basically like a 5 out of 10. You know, it could have gone further, but considering when it came out. Right, that was one thing I definitely did want to say. You know, now in the post Me Too, or, well, let's see, this was made pre Me Too. I don't know if what we're in right now is Me Too era or post Me Too, because I have seen some people say that, you know, there's been backlash to Me Too, which is so depressing. Every single time, you know, minorities make even the slightest bit of progress, you got bigots trying to pull back, you know, undo all that progress. If this had been made during Me Too, before any backlash to Me Too, I think there would have been substantially less, possibly not none, but substantially less sexuality. Honestly, I could imagine there might have been at least one thing where, you know, a penis is like, yeah, there's some kind of yeah, a penis is cut or some kind of, yeah, you know, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just trying to, you know, gauge how this or describe what I think it would have looked like. And it's possible that there is a Me Too version of this movie or something very similar. I'd like to watch it. Please let me know in the comments if you know of one. I think that I can imagine she would have succeeded at the end, and it would have been at least in part because of some kind of support network. You know, that's something I've noted in Me Too progressive horror. And let's see, I specify progressive, you know, I'm saying horror made in the era of Me Too that is not, you know, anti-Me Too. And yeah, there would probably have been at least a little bit more like ethnic and gender diversity, which I think could absolutely have worked. I'm not one of the people who think that like automatically makes something worse. I'm not saying it always automatically makes something better. I think there are some stories, like, I don't think, well, let's see. If hypothetically, let's see, if the Babadook or the Nightingale, if they were not about white cis women, you know, that the white cis women, that conjures a very specific image in Western culture, and that's what it's, you know, using. You know, if they were trans or not white, you know, like, it would, I don't know if it would have been worse movies, but they would have been different. They wouldn't have done what they do quite the same. Now, let's see. Like, you know, if, let's see. If, hypothetically, you know, the mother in the Babadook was trans or otherwise had adopted the kid, then you don't have, because it's crucial to that movie that there is that, you know, yeah, she carried him for 9 months, she gave birth to him, and now she's struggling with this, you know, yeah, it's crucial that it's not an adoption, you know. But let's see, what else would yeah, the movie would definitely have had, you know, less gratuity, stuff would have been fleshed out more. Yeah. I think I'm gonna leave in the description box a link to my videos on recent progressive horror and or comedy, because if I mention, you know, what I've just said is based on some specific ones, and I don't really want to spoil those because for some of them it's definitely spoiler. But yeah, that'll give you an idea of what kind of movie I'm talking about. And yeah, I mean, if what I just described, the Me Too version of this movie, sounds good, then yeah, some of those might be, you know, note not all of them are horror, you know, and some of them are comedy horror, but I'm pretty sure, yeah. But yeah, you know, you can look them up on IMDb and find out which ones are horror. Yeah. I'm glad that I made sure that I had so much time. I leave for the chiropractor in about an 50 minutes or so. I actually did, earlier today, I did think, should I maybe make it closer? Because I'm probably not going to film for that long, and I like to try to get chiropractic treatment very soon after I've recorded a video. Yeah, I'm glad I gave myself this much time to do a video about a movie that not very many people know, even less care about. What can I say? It just, yeah. I thought it was worth making, and at the end of the day, you know, I can live with this video getting very few views. You know, I find this movie too fascinating to not explore like this. And yeah, this was what that was. That was what this was. That this was what this was what this was.